That's Tyler Ramsey from his new album, New Lost Ages. The former Band of Horses guitarist has just released his 5th solo album, and it's a beauty. We found Tyler at home in Asheville, North Carolina, and asked him how it felt to finally release this collection of songs that he's described as an album of hope and despair.
I'm feeling good. It's getting to be busy again, which I haven't had in quite a while. My last record was before the pandemic, and I didn't get to tour it as long as I had hoped, and so I've been home, and I'm really excited and nervous, to get out and support this record, just to see how things go. And but I have high hopes. I think we, I'm putting a lot of effort into it, and obviously the record, we put tons of love into that record. So it's I think it turned out really, really nice. So I'm hoping people get to hear it.
Right. And when you say we, I assume you're talking about, well, you have a little power trio that I think you play with on the record, and your producer is Phil Eck. So is that the kind of team that you're referring to there?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think everybody that was involved, but I think that we was referring to probably me and Phil, just as the ones that, were communicating back and forth and planning it from the start, But I mean, even everyone that's been helping me work on getting them, figuring out a way to get the music out into the world. But yeah, I think Phil was really caring in how he approached this record. I think he really wanted the best for it. So that was, and that's what we got. I think.
So you've worked with him before. What is it about him, and what he brings to the table that appeals to you?
Well, he was involved early on in that Infinite Arms record, Band of Horses, but he left the project. But I noticed, I mean, I learned so much from him in that brief amount of time, just about dialing in guitar sounds and watching him try to get the right drum sound, and how patient he was. He was really patient, with a bunch of people that were kind of off the rails a little bit. So he did a good job until he decided it was not going to work out, so he left. But I just, his records are gorgeous, and there's, such a big part of my life, and a lot of people I know just like had their minds blown by the records that Phil's made in the past. So it's when I randomly bumped into him out in Seattle, and he came to, I was out there to play a show with Carl Bramel, and Phil saw me walking down the road and texted me, and ended up coming by after the show, and we talked, and I handed him a copy of my last record, For the Morning. And he really liked it. And so I was like, man, I would love to do a record with you sometime. And after he listened to that record, he was like, yeah, let's do it. So we just kind of like worked towards that for quite a while, and then finally, made it happen.
Okay. So you recorded up in Seattle, and you have a couple other musicians playing with you, Morgan and Sean, it looks like, I believe. So who found them? Was that Phil, or was that you, or did you guys
do it together? That was Phil. I had some people that I play with here in town that I was going to bring out there, but Phil, it's Morgan Henderson. He's a member of the Fleet Foxes. He played bass on my record, and Sean Lane, who is currently playing drums for Heart. And is just, so Phil had worked with those two guys in the studio quite a bit, and just knew, I didn't have like a bottomless budget. I was funding it myself. So he was like, I know these guys are fantastic, and they work, they're going to do a great job. And he's like, I know them, they're here in town, let's use them. And he wanted to use the studios that he was familiar with, like Avast. And so we ended up doing it on his turf, which the whole idea of working with Phil was that I was going to hand over control to him with what he thought the songs needed to be, and that was part of it. And I was nervous to get in there with those guys because I hadn't been playing with people for a while. So it just kind of to walk in and have these two guys that I knew were like just phenomenal musicians. It, you know, at first a little bit of nerves, and then it just really worked out really quickly, and we locked in and had the rhythm, you know, the basic tracks done in a week. So
Yeah, cool. Now there's 10 songs that comprise the album. A few of them have been around for a little while. I think the Flair you probably first started playing back in 2020. So what is it about these 10 songs that ties them together for you?
well, they were all, I mean, they were written in a, I feel like I always write a record in a window of time that feels like it's a cohesive representation of who I am at that time, you know.
Right.
So these were all written in that, you know, in that window of time. I I was surprised that I was playing Flair. I was playing Flair at that time. I didn't know that.
The reason I found out is I was looking through Setlist FM, and
Oh, wow.
somebody claimed that yeah, it was the second time you'd have played it in one of the set lists in 2020.
Oh, cool.
So
That's awesome.
I don't know
Yeah.
if it's true, but
Entirely possible. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, no, I usually come up with a song that like after I tour an album, that's when you kind of like can let go finally of the songs that you've been working on, and then
Yep.
I feel like that new creative spark happens, and it usually happens like just with one song, and I'm like, oh, here's the song that's going to lead into the next album, and so you know that those all kind of came one after another, and next thing I knew, I was ready to reach out and see if Phil wanted to, you know, produce all of them.
Okay. So it leads off with a tune called These Ghosts. Why did you choose that to kick things off?
Get out, these ghosts. Let them out, let them all go. Nobody here can control anyone anymore.
I think it pretty well explains the feeling of a lot of the songs. Like it definitely has the meaning behind it that is carried through a lot of these songs, which is like kind of passing through dark times, moving forward, allowing yourself to let go of things that have been weighing you down, and things like that. So that's a simple version of whatever it is. But
Yep.
yeah, and then Phil really thought that should be the lead off track. You know, and I think I agreed too. I think it really, even from the start when I was kind of like starting to sequence it in my head, that one was always first on the list. It's just kind of like, I think it gets your attention in a cool way and just kind of really like leads into what the album is.
Mm-hmm. I noticed there's a line referring to some poisonous years in that song, and then later on you have a song called Poisonous Summer. So something toxic going on that we need to know about.
I mean, yeah, you know, those could be those could be representative of different things. You know, we all went through the pandemic time, so that the Poisonous Summer could be something that came out of that. I mean, it's not completely that. I don't want to like just call it a pandemic song, but it you know, and then Poisonous Years for Me to Drag Around. Yeah, I mean, there's, you know, there were definitely like some dark times towards the end of like Band of Horses and not getting along and things like that just weren't feeling healthy, and it, you know, so that kind of, to me, that was part of it, but it's also a lot. It's just a lot of things. I mean, I feel like my life is constantly moving in and out of, and everyone's life, you know, you're moving in and out of trouble into something easier, and you're moving in and out of darkness into light, and that's just kind of my reoccurring thing that ends up getting into most of my songs, you know, in whatever way it does. But yeah.
Okay. And the title track, New Lost Ages, is another one that's kind of an older tune, I think. And it seems like a cautionary tale. What are you warning us about?
There's a steady bell that's ringing out again and again. It echoes high up these mountains on the valley wind. And I heard it tolling out a warning for the way we've been. And I believe that everyone could hear it if they just lean in.
I mean, you know, I it's a. Have you watched the news?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And I'll tell
Yeah.
you, being an American, watching the news from New Zealand puts a whole new perspective on everything. So it's
Yeah.
interesting. So
yeah.
how political of an animal are you?
You know, I try to keep my head out of it as much as I can because I don't know. I think that we tend to right now in our society tend to like be oversaturated with everything, you know.
Right.
So it's easy to like bury your head in that kind of stuff and lose your hope. But I have children and I have the desire to live a happy life myself, and I want them to see me with hope and you know, desire to like see what's going to happen in 10 years, you know, like build a life that is beautiful. So I try to like dabble in all that stuff just to not be completely unaware. And I don't try to completely shelter my kids, but I think I don't know. I think there's a fine line that you have to walk when you're processing all the things that are fed to us all the time.
Right. And do you spend a lot of time online, on social media, on digging around through stuff?
As little as I can, you know. It's unfortunately it's a requirement as a musician, you know,
Right.
or a creative person. We're all kind of like tied into that for our jobs, you know. So it's you know, my wife's a doll maker and she has to be on there all the time, and I'm, you know, as a musician, I have to now help promote the shows and do everything I can to promote the record and build my audience through those outlets. And so that's why I get on there. And it doesn't, lots of times I'm not happy about it. I don't see a lot on there that feeds my soul or whatever. My favorite thing I can get out of like getting on Instagram is like somebody introducing me to a new record that came out, you know. That's when I get excited. I'm like, oh man, I never heard that. And I'll go listen to it. And a lot of times, like, yeah, I found some really cool music from just people recommending things or talking about things they've been listening to. I just think that's the best part. Or like finding some beautiful visual artist that just is inspiring, you know, on there, or a photographer or things like that. But yeah.
Now, I assume with the record coming out, you're going to be interacting in real time with real people instead of online. So
yes.
You're looking for, do you look forward to that? Or I assume you're going to be out on the road and playing some shows and meet and greets and all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. There's such like a magic to playing a show and then talking to the people that were there afterwards. And they're, you know, the people that want to stick around and talk. I always hang out, you know. I feel like I don't know, music is important to people, and I feel like some people connect to what I do in a way that if I get to hear their story about how it helped them through a hard time, or if it, you know, if they played it at their wedding or something like that, I love that kind of stuff. And I love meeting people, and more I just, yeah, having conversations and those moments at shows like make up for all the hours of things you have to do to get to the show,
Right, yeah, yep.
I like to drag that part out as much as possible. Like I will play a lot of music and I will talk to a lot of people, and then, on to like the driving and checking into a hotel and all that other part, which is the part that's, a little more difficult.
Now, getting back to the record, I mentioned briefly there's a tune called Poisonous Summer. Seems to have some strings on it, and it's also 7 minutes long. So do you look at that as kind of the centerpiece, even though it's near the end of the record, as something that is an important tune for you?
The way that I've been feeling cannot carry on. After this poisonous summer has gone.
I feel like that one turned out beautifully. A friend of mine, Scott Moore, is a violin player, and he used to live in Louisville, Kentucky, and he played on my last record, For the Morning. And then he and his wife moved out to the Northeast, and but he just I reached out to him and I was like, hey, do you want to play on some of these songs? And I sent him that one, and he just created this beautiful. I mean, the part in the middle was interesting and it was very cool, and I had ideas about what it could be.
Right.
But when I heard when he sent me back the arrangement that he did in that middle section, I just was blown away and continue to get goosebumps every time I listened to his parts. He played on like 3 or 4 songs on the record, and just made me so happy. I love just like sending something off to somebody that I trust, and like having them send back something that just blows my mind. I think that's just such an entertaining part of making records. I had that happen with well, I was in the room with Carl Bramel. He played some pedal steel and some guitars and
Yep.
stuff like that when on this record, and then Russ Paul is a pedal steel player in Nashville, who's like a big session guy, and he played on my last record as well. And he played on Where Were You on this record, and just his part just made me so happy. I just like get so excited when I get to hear it mixed in with the rest of the stuff.
Right. So when you're out on the road, how are you going to recreate what, or do you try to recreate, or do you remake it when you're playing live?
I like to recreate it. It really, my goal in writing songs is that they can live on a guitar and a vocal. Like if I'm playing acoustic guitar and singing the song, that it's not lacking anything, Everything else that I add on top of that is cool and can make it really beautiful and lush, but the song doesn't lack anything when it's at that core space. And that's my goal. I'm telling you, I don't necessarily always achieve that goal, but I try. So yeah, when I go out, depending on what the show is and whether I can afford to take a big band out with me, sometimes you can't, it's not always possible.
Right.
But I have anywhere from solo shows to duo shows with a friend of mine that plays pedal steel and guitar and is able to play keyboards and sing and stuff. So, and then full band shows would be, bass, drums, pedal steel, guitar.
Right.
And I've been playing with a vibe player lately. So he's playing keyboards and a little bit of acoustic guitar, but he mostly plays vibes on some of the songs. So it adds like a different element.
Right.
Beautiful.
It is a very different environment for a musician like yourself these days than say it was in the 70s. I'm an old guy, so I can remember the 70s. Bands were together, or artists had tour, and they'd tour to support the record, and they'd have backing from a label and blah blah blah. And it's probably even different than when you started, just however long ago you did, 15, 20 years ago. Is it better or worse now for you? Do you think?
Oh man, I would like to, it seemed like it was more just geared towards like you could just be a musician back then.
Right.
Maybe I feel like there's a lot more involved in it these days, like going back to the social media thing and like
Yeah.
you're kind of wearing all the hats when you go out, and that's challenging because it's already a really hard existence, if you're going to be a touring musician. It's there's enough just getting to the show and playing the shows and then being away from home and being ungrounded. And so yeah, I don't want to complain and say that it's
Yeah.
that it's harder, but I think it might be harder. I think there's more to it now that I think people expect more out of artists. One thing I've noticed too that I think about a lot is like people expect like some sort of story behind everything.
Everything has a backstory. Yes.
Yeah. And
You're right.
I'm fine with that, but it's different than what I grew up on. Like
Right.
musically, you maybe didn't know anything about that artist, but you had all these like ideas of who that artist was.
Well,
You
yeah. Well,
know
like
what
for instance,
song-
Led Zeppelin 4, when it came out, I remember that. Nobody talked about the backstory. Nobody went and talked to Jimmy Page and suggested that this was part of this. You listened to the record, you turned it up, you went to the show.
Yeah,
That was it.
You didn't need to be enticed by like their personal trauma story that they went through. I mean, everyone's got problems, and musicians have a lot of problems, and a lot of times that's what leads them into an artistic avenue.
Yeah.
I think it's unfortunate that we have to like spell everything out.
Right.
I feel like it's more fun to not know.
Gotcha.
I think a lot of people, nowadays you have to like describe every song and talk about all the details, and you have to tell them, what was going on in your life, like, or if you don't have a story, then it's not, people don't get it, so it's, to me, that's a weird turn in our existence as
and some
creative
people seem to thrive on it. Like, for instance, I was watching the Grammys yesterday. Taylor Swift was all over the place, and everybody knows who every song was written about, and she seems to be just fine with that, and so do they. So, did you watch the Grammys? What did you think of it?
I did not watch the Grammys. I was actually I had been invited over to some friend's house. They were kind of doing a send off for me, and I played a little set of the new music just on acoustic guitar, and had a really cool night that night. So
nice.
But I missed the Grammys. It's a different world. Band of Horses, we were nominated for Infinite Arms, and didn't win, but it just kind of, I don't really know what all that is. I don't know like competition and music and like who went.
I mean, it's a great showcase, and a lot of people, it brings, and there was a beautiful thing with Joni Mitchell performing at age 80, and singing both sides now. So
yeah,
that was all right. And Fast Car, Tracy Chapman and all that. So there was some nice moments in it, if you look at it that way. But yeah, I mean, I don't even think anybody cares who wins anymore. So who has the most money at the end, I think, which I think Taylor Swift is winning that one.
Right.
Anyway, all right. Oh, I just wanted to touch on the last song, Arrow to Bow, which I think was released as a split single about a year or so ago. Is it the same version, or have you re-recorded it?
Oh wow, yeah, man, you did your research. You found all these details. Yeah, Arrow to Bow. I forgot that I had done that. I forgot. I recorded
with Jason Little, right? Yeah.
Jason Lytle, yeah. Lytle and my friend Kramus. We did that split single. That was a version that I did here in my house. Like, this is my little music room that I'm in right now, and it's so I did that one all by myself here. This is way more. This has like Scott Moore playing strings, and yeah, it's a bigger version of it, and more fully realized version of the song.
Arrow to bow, draw back slow, steady breathing,
what are you going to do on release day? Anything you can talk to people, play out, sit at
Yeah,
home, drink?
so I'm doing something tonight in my town. There's a place called Citizen Vinyl where I pressed the album.
Oh, cool.
They have a pressing plant and they have like a cafe with a stage. So I'm gonna go down there and like listen to the record with some people and you know and talk about it with whoever shows up. And then release day, I'll be in Nashville at a record store at Grimey's. And
I knew it was going to be Grimey's. I
yeah.
went to Nashville for the first time about a year ago to Americana Fest and
Oh, cool.
made a few purchases at Grimey's myself.
Yeah, legendary spot. Yeah, it looks like you've purchased a few
Yeah,
of those.
I got carried away.
That's fantastic, man. I love it. I love it.
What do you got?
Yeah, that's what I'll be doing, and then hitting the road kind of like shortly after that. So
All right.
hopefully I'll come your way.
That would
you
be
know.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about it. You know, it's not easy, as you know, to get all the
Right.
way over, but yeah, that would be my dream to
Yep.
make it back.
And people still seem reticent to get out and about in crowds, even at this, 2024. I just went to a show a couple weeks or this past weekend. I thought would have been packed, and it was fairly sparsely attended, and it was kind of sad to see. And must be.
Yeah, that's kind of what the nerves are for me about heading back out. It's just it is that way. Like all across the board, I think numbers are down for people coming out.
Yeah.
For a big band. So it's we'll see how it goes. I really hope people come out, and support it, because it is, that touring is the way you make your living at this, and
Yep.
it's the way I'll be able to continue to keep making records. So.
Well, you got to have some vinyl at the merch table. That's where the big money is, isn't it?
Right. That's right.
It seems to be here. Lisa, do you say there's a pressing plant in Asheville?
Yeah, it's called Citizen Vinyl. They've been open for a handful of years now, and they're pressing a lot of records. I had all mine made there.
Yeah.
And they're maybe going to be working on some pressing some of my stuff that's never been on vinyl. And
Oh, cool. Yeah. There's a new one that opened
really
here in Auckland called Holiday, because I think up until recently there was like one place in Prague that was pressing everything, and
Yeah.
suddenly there's a demand for more records, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it was definitely backed up.
Yeah.
Big time. Like people weren't able to get their records in time. So now I think there's a lot of new places that opened up, and they seem to be doing well. It's fun to watch. In that place there's a big window from the cafe into the pressing plant, so you can sit there and have coffee and watch the guys in there, like actually pressing the vinyl. And
I don't think I've ever seen a record be pressed. That would be fascinating.
It's pretty cool to watch. Yeah, it's they have all the different colors of vinyl you can choose from, and just it's quite a thing to see.
And we get into a debate about whether colored vinyl is good or bad for the sound quality and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah. I think you might probably know about that.
I'd say picture discs are kind of wobbly, I got a few of those and they could have sounded better, but colored vinyl seems to be fine, I think.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Anyway. All righty. Well, this is all very exciting, and I can see that you're excited about the record. We are too. So thank you for spending time with me talking about it. It's hope it does everything you want it to do, and hopefully you'll make your way down to this part of the world too.
I hope so, and I have to say thank you so much for giving me the time and talking about the record. It really means a lot. Everybody that talks about it is such a big help. So thank you for spending your time talking to me.
Happy to help. All righty. Have a great day or evening, in the case with you.
Yeah.